And it's my special pleasure to introduce you to the chair of this last panel. Fabri Blacklock is Nucoorilma, Ngarabal, and Biripi from New South Wales. I hope I didn't make this really. But it's our distinct pleasure to have her here because coming from Australia, so that's the farthest distance. And it's really important that we have representation from Australia here. So we are really happy. And especially also because she is at the University of New South Wales at the Art of Design department. And this is one of the co-sponsors of our conference. So the conference would not be whole without this mentioning that the important support from Australia. So Fabri, can the rest of the biography, as always, is in the package and online. So, Fabri, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Wolf. Ginagaya Gagus and Ginders. I'd just like to acknowledge the native people of Los Angeles who's on lands we're meeting today and pay my respects to all Indigenous people here today and also joining from across the world. So the title of this panel is Resistance, Education and Representation in Literature and Arts, and I'd like to introduce our first presenter. Kat Griefen is faculty member and program coordinator for the Gallery and Museum Studies program at Queensborough Community College, Cunny, and she is also on the faculty for the MA in Museum Studies with the Cunny School of Professional Studies. So Danyelle Means currently serves as the first Indigenous Executive Director of the Center for Contemporary Arts, CCA, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she's been since 2021, and she's previously held leadership roles at the Institute of American Indian Arts and the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of the American Indian. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity to present our work on organizing survivance and sovereignty on Turtle Island, engaging with contemporary Native American art at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center at QCC. I am Danyelle Means, Executive Director for the Center for Contemporary Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
And I am Kat Griefen at Queensborough Community College and the School of Professional Studies at CUNY as well. Just a little bit about Queensborough Community College and the Kupferberg Holocaust Center for some background on the project. Ours is one of the most diverse colleges in the United States, with some details here on screen. Queensborough Community College's Gallery and Museum Studies program is also one of the oldest associate's degrees in the field and one of the only, probably the only early academic entry point into the field in New York City, which of course is a place that has a wealth of museums and cultural institutions. You see the first image of the exhibition we'll be speaking about, Survivance and Sovereignty on Turtle Island here. And what you're also seeing is what is the temporary exhibition space at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. The Harriet and Kenneth Kupferberg Holocaust Center at Queensborough Community College is pictured here from the exterior on the right. The architecture is to reference Kristallnacht, the Night of the Broken Glass. And in that space is where the permanent exhibition on the Holocaust is located. So they have the two exhibition spaces and a classroom. There's an image of the classroom on the left. We see one of the Holocaust survivors, Hanne Lieberman, who is regularly interacting, her and other first and second generation Holocaust survivors, regularly interacting with students and faculty. And it's this classroom space that was kind of the kernel of the idea for this project, because this is an older photograph, but you see there panels addressing different genocides. And I recognize as a faculty member we're missing, there wasn't a panel recognizing or addressing genocide on this continent in that space, and that maybe there was an opportunity to do programming or exhibitions. The mission of the Holocaust Center, you see here, obviously deals directly with the Holocaust, but also opens things up more broadly to address prejudice, racism, and stereotyping. So much of the programming that happens there is not only about the Holocaust, but also about other genocides. The project began also in the context of the Indigenous-led movement for land, water, and life at Standing Rock in 2016-17. That was the beginning of the thinking around creating this project. When we also, of course, saw opportunities for allyship with students and veterans, and in faith leaders, sometimes Jewish faith leaders, coming together and participating. On the screen, we're showing you also one of the artworks or social collaboration projects by Chinoopa Hansgaluger that occurred at Standing Rock, and then that was also represented in the exhibition. For those who may not be familiar with this, this Mirror Shield project was a call this artist made to people to send these mirror shields that are both defensive, create and send them both defensive, and then very literally reflective. Danyelle.
So in our conversations, our initial conversations about this exhibition, Kat and I really were discussing, how would we sort of bring this to life within the Holocaust Center. And one of the ideas was that we are really representing a multitude of voices here. And how do we do that in terms of really sharing that authority? And so moving away from this idea of a top-down model and recognizing, acknowledging, and giving a place at the table to the different kinds of knowledge that comes from either an Indigenous perspective, an artist perspective, and indeed a student perspective. Next slide. So what did that involve? Shared authority for us really involved the students learning about curation, learning about all aspects of exhibition, privileging Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous voices, and also recognizing that we were in a center that focused on the Holocaust and the genocide of that was encompassed there, and really making sure that there was space available for everyone to see themselves within the exhibition. Next slide. So our hypotheses and goals. Really the goal here was to build allyship between both the community and the campus community, but as well as the Indigenous community, to also engage with all of the different ramifications that were a part of this exhibition. Next slide. So our curatorial team and participants, we really wanted to make sure that we had a sense of engagement and buy-in from our variety of stakeholders. So we had, as listed here, we had KHC staff, QCC students, as well as Indigenous knowledge keepers and artists, and myself as the Indigenous curator. We wanted to make sure that all participants had access to our team and to participate. Next slide. One of our exhibition advisors that was key to this is Diane Freyer. And Diane is a filmmaker and founder and current director of Amarinda, an organization that really has been at the forefront of the contemporary Native arts movement in New York City. This is, we're well over 30 years now, and Diane's advice and participation was integral to our exhibition. Next slide. So the way we approached this was a little different from potentially how exhibitions have been done traditionally. And one of the things that we wanted to do was building that stakeholder engagement by doing a series of colloquium that were held in advance of the installation of the exhibition. So one of the things that we'll see, really that this was going to be the first exhibit at any Holocaust center in the US that really engaged this idea of Indigenous genocide on this continent. Next slide. And so here are a listing of the various colloquium that we had to really get not only the larger Jewish community within Bayside as a part of our stakeholder, but also the campus community. So faculty and staff, as well as students, presented a variety of different programs. And Kat, you can advance to the next slide, that had a tremendous impact on, again, building that community stakeholder engagement that was really necessary, that we would have that kind of participation on a variety of different levels. So we had colloquia that addressed the residential schools. We had a colloquia that addressed as performing survivance, recognizing one of the earliest Native American theater groups in New York City, Spider Woman Theater. Next slide. And so again, KHC community members were not only attendees at our series of colloquia, but they also became very engaged. And we actually had the KHC Community Committee participate in the exhibition development. And they eventually became the exhibition docents.
The other major group of collaborators were, of course, the students. So they started in an art curating course that I was instructing, and Danyelle Means came in to speak with them as well. And then those students that were interested in continuing with the project applied and received paid fellowships, curatorial fellowships from the Kupferberg Holocaust Center to continue the work with us. Then those students now have graduated, gone on to other academic degrees, and also two professions in the field, bringing that experience of working with shared authority and the topical knowledge with them. Practically, what the students were involved with to begin with was concept development and research. So we invited them into the conversations around titling the exhibition, what the criteria for the artists in the exhibition might be. And then they were involved in their coursework in research into those artists, and then collaborative exhibition writing. So you'll see some collaborative exhibition text that they were involved with shortly. They also, as individuals, introduced colloquium programs, those that Danyelle spoke about previously. And in that we were able to engage directly with some of the Indigenous knowledge keepers and speakers that were that came to the campus. They also participated, like Danyelle said, in these curatorial meetings. So we have the students, we have the artists, we have Danyelle and myself, we have the amazing staff, I have to say, at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center, Director Dr. Laura Cohen, Marissa Hollywood, Associate Director, who also were participating in many of these curatorial meetings together as we developed the project. A student, a graduate also, Eddie Ruiz, designed the exhibition catalog that many of you have in your packets, and participated in much of the design of the exhibition. When the show was on view, to give you a sense of how we engaged the campus community, a lot of faculty were involved in course alignment. I realized in listening to the prior speakers that I should have listed the science department too, because we had a lot of science professors who were bringing their students in and addressing questions around environmental justice in relationship to the artist's work. Also theater, Heather Huggins brought students who created body-centered theater pieces in response to the artworks. Philip Listengard in sculpture, having students creating works in reflection in relationship to the Mirror Shield project. English students writing, Franca Ferrari in our speech department and communications, assigning students to learn about the exhibition and then give mini tours to their colleagues, bringing in more students. This gives you a little taste of some of the exhibition text. On the left is the introduction, which was on the wall in the exhibition space, and also this is the catalog page reproduced here. On the right, the cover of the catalog, and just want to mention that the only artist, unfortunately, who had passed by the time we opened the show was Shan Goshorn, who we dedicated the exhibition to. And her work is on the cover, in particular because this work titled Genocide combines through her very beautiful and very specific Cherokee basket weaving text that relates to the etymology and history of genocide, and text that relates to experiences of young people in the residential schools. Briefly, we'll show you a few works that were included in the exhibition. Judy Dow was identified early on as an artist to be exhibiting by Sophia Lago, one of the graduate fellow who worked with us in the process. She brought to the table this idea that the fact that Judy Dow was working with black ash, customary black ash basketry, but addressing very contemporary topics, important topics, such as this, would make her an important voice here. She also came to campus, spoke with students, did a lot of different interactions. What she pictures here are two different backyards, one from her community and the other of a eugenicist from Vermont who had targeted her community for forced removal, institutionalization, forced sterilization, based on attack really on the differences in lifeways. A lot of text here, but the reason that we are reproducing it all is to show you there the text on the white background is the collaborative curatorial text, and then the text with the gray background is that of the artist's voice.
Another one of the really important pieces that has an obvious reference to the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, is Erica Lord's piece. And Erica here in the medium of photography has used the blood quantum as well as the enrollment number as a way of identifying herself. This particular text that is written here is from the curatorial perspective. And Kat, if you would advance to the next one, this is Erica's own text. And again, within this, this is an opportunity both for understanding from the artist's perspective what they feel the important parts of this is about. And as you can see in Erica's text, it's less about the genocide, but her actually feeling that she doesn't need these particular identifiers to feel complete. And that is an important part of combining both the curatorial aspect and obviously the artist's perspective in giving context to their work. We had over 17 artists represented in the exhibition. And you can imagine that to be able to combine both our own voices, our own curatorial voice, as well as the artist's voice, had an incredible impact in terms of engagement with our audiences.
In terms of then engagement with the exhibition, just to give you a snapshot. We had folks from various different departments, faculty members and students, and then not just students at the college level, but also local high schools, middle schools, community groups, and then 7 events, which were in addition to the pre-exhibition events that Danyelle spoke about, another 7 events during the exhibition. One which was kind of a ceremonial opening and gathering and celebration, which was one of the really wonderful opportunities to bring people together. We couldn't resist showing you on the right-hand side a little bit of also the student reflection. We had a space where students could reflect on what they saw and what they learned, and we're pleased to see that they were finding ways that the materials were relevant to them. In terms of impact, cross-campus and multidiscipline engagement, and then the gallery and museum studies students in particular, taking topical knowledge, understanding of the process of shared authority, and bringing that now to the current institutions where they're employed, such as the Metropolitan Museum of Art, such as the Bronx Museum of Art, and others. More recently, Zach Reisinger, a graduate student of Cherokee descent, created a wonderful library guide. There's a link here on the screen that is accessible definitely to all students and faculty in the CUNY system, but most of the materials are open source or more accessible outside as well, and they tie these topics and these artists' work in the exhibition to broader issues around environmental justice and so forth. We have now a permanent Human Rights Museum program series where we have programming each year that includes Indigenous voices. This is a kind of living land acknowledgement that came out of the exhibition. And I think it's also important to share that we worked with the Lenape Center to do a training during the process. And then David Martine, who's a Shinnecock Cultural Preservation Officer, in addition to Diane Freyer, was another advisor and someone who worked with us throughout.
And so in terms of lasting impact, I really just want to recognize that the KHC has created a permanent land acknowledgement, and that is a first step. The land acknowledgement, well, at times can seem performative, is really the first step in acknowledging that these genocides have happened, and to Kat's point, that there is a ongoing engagement with Indigenous communities to make sure that this is not forgotten. One of the things that I think is incredibly important from a museum or gallery perspective is that this has really opened up the idea of allyship as created across different survivor communities, and again allows for those voices to be heard. And that really was one of the most important aspects of what Kat and I wanted to do and be able to show, is that not only engagement from the community perspective, but also engagement from the curatorial perspective really privileged Native voices and other communities that had a stakeholder aspect to the exhibition as a whole. Thank you all very much for listening, and we look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you.
I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Lorena Fontaine. I'm Cree and Anishinaabe from Canada, and I'm one of the co-organizers. I just wanted to say that I was really inspired by your presentation. I felt a lot of excitement because of the impact that your project is having. I love the collaboration. I love the community engagement, the working with the students and the faculty, and just the community that you've created from this project is I think invaluable. And I don't have so much a question, but more of a comment. I stepped in at a genocide conference years ago for somebody who couldn't speak, and that's where I met Dorota Oglala, who is one of the co-organizers, who's a Holocaust survivor, and I'm the descendant of residential school survivors. My mother and father and both my grandparents attended the schools. Dorota and I felt an instant connection to each other. She felt like family right away. And the more we got to know, the more that we got to know each other, the more we realized that we had a lot in common. Our historical experiences are very different from our parents' experience by being in the Holocaust and the residential schools, but the impact that it's had on our family life is quite similar. And she's like a family member now to me. I bring her to conferences. She brings me to hers. We do a lot of collaborative work. And so I think that these type of projects are so meaningful. I can't even describe them in words. So I am so grateful that you're doing the work that you do, and I hope to maybe connect with you to talk about maybe what we could do in Canada. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that comment. If you don't mind, if I could take just a minute to acknowledge what happened when we first opened the exhibition. The son of the founders of the Kupferberg Holocaust Center came for a tour, and when he arrived, there was a tense moment. He didn't understand the connection between Indigenous genocide and his family's legacy at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. And so as we walked him through, one of the things that he began to understand was that his understanding of the Indigenous experience in the US was completely ill-informed and obviously lacking the information that we were trying to share. So as we walked through and as he engaged with the artists and some of the students, when he gave his introduction to the exhibition later that afternoon, he said, I came to this thinking that this was not my parents' legacy, that somehow this was not connected to my parents' legacy. And he got a little choked up, as I am now, and said that he now understood how important this work is incredibly important. And so I thank you for your comment. Our work is not done. And we need to make sure that when representing Indigenous people, that their voices are a part of what we do.
Well, I'll just add that, Danyelle, thank you for the comment, and please do reach out to us about possible collaborations in the future. We have this ongoing Human Rights Museum series. There's opportunities to do work together, I imagine. And I want to make sure I credit Danyelle here with having that vision, that idea that when she recognized that there was the group of survivors and second generation survivors that come together around bagels and brunch at the Holocaust Center, and then also around programming and other activities with students. And she said, there's an opportunity to bring these communities together. They may not see each other immediately, but there's an opportunity through the visual arts and to be able to make those connections visible, and to see that happen was incredible. Yeah, I don't know if we have other questions, but let's see.
Hello, it's Martha. Thank you so much for your presentation, and also for the catalogs that you were so generous to share with us that everyone has received. As Lorena said, your process and your work is such an example for others who pursue this kind of collaboration in the future. But I know it couldn't have come without its own set of mistakes and blunders and, delights and so on. And I'm just wondering, if you had to go back to the beginning, knowing what you know now at the other end of it, what would you tell yourself then that others might be able to learn from? And maybe what didn't, or what would you do differently if you were now pursuing this in the future?
Danyelle, do you want to start or should I? I guess, really briefly, I would say that the process was more important than the product. And that I think we maybe had a little bit of the sense of that as we went through it, but not entirely. So I will say there's absolutely, I teach curatorial studies at the graduate level now. The exhibition texts are too long. I have that is definitely not, so I would have made them shorter. There's various things like that, but in the end, I think it almost doesn't matter as much as the fact that the relationships that we created through the process, and then with that the work, the most important work would be what people learned about content-wise, but also about working the shared authority. That was the work of the show, not the show itself in the end.
I think I would say that one thing I feel is very, very valuable, and please forgive me for my breakdown. One thing that was incredibly valuable, and if you can and are able to do this, is the idea of garnering that engagement in advance of the actual exhibition. And oftentimes that's hard to do. But I think that was really an incredible point that had the entire community invested in what we were doing and invested in seeing that product. It was definitely a long process, and unfortunately COVID took a couple of months out of the exhibition being on display, but we did get that opportunity to really have the engagement of the various communities throughout the fall and into the spring of 2020. It was really, to me, that had the most impact of being able to do those colloquium that addressed repatriation and restorative justice and dig into some of the deeper issues that we weren't able to necessarily address with the didactic material within the exhibition. Even though Kat says those exhibition labels were a little long, I disagree. I think there's so much information there, and it really did engage our audiences. And then finally, I would say, being able to have an opportunity for people to write their feelings and write their responses and engage in a different way. I think that was an incredible opportunity that a lot of the students took advantage of, and some of the community members being able to act as docents and have a sense of wanting to share this information in a way that they did with their own Holocaust and genocide exhibitions, that they felt a real sense of ownership with the exhibition, was an incredibly important aspect of this as well.
Hello, Fabri, Fabri Blacklock, I'm chairing it. Sorry, I just wanted to No? Oh, I just wanted to say that was an amazing project, and I started my career out as a curator, and I think the student participation that's just an amazing collaboration. But I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about the relationships that were built between the student collaborators and the artists as the process of curating the exhibition.
So some of this we did, when we were thinking about the criteria for the artists, we did want some of the artists to be local to the region for a number of reasons, but one was certainly connected to what you pointed out, which was the opportunity to be able to bring artists to the campus, compensate them for their time and their participation, and have them be able to interact with the students. So some of those pre-exhibition programs involved artists that then were exhibiting artists in those programs, and we planned them so they would actually, kind of the technical way was, they would come earlier in the day, they would meet with the curatorial committee, including the students, and then go later in the day be participating in the talk that was kind of open to the public. So that was one of the ways that happened, that kind of direct interaction between the students and the participating artists, especially those that were local. I'll say Nadima Agard in particular was someone who attended a number of programs, and Diane Freyer, who's a filmmaker and advisor, of course, and others. I don't know if you want to add to that, Danyelle.
I think also another way of engaging with the artists was doing the research and finding the artists. And so I was so delighted because we didn't give much direction other than contemporary Native artists. And the students really took this to a whole other level. I mean, the Judy Dow piece, there were pieces by Nicholas Glannon. These are contemporary artists that are doing a variety of things, and to have the students go through their work, to engage the artists in conversation, whether that was via email or through a phone call. It was really the students generating that research, not just me as a contemporary arts curator to say, hey, look at this artist or that artist, but to actually do the research and find those artists who are doing really significant work that has some resonance, and be able to have those conversations with the artists.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation and this whole project. And one of the things is, which is always happening is these unexpected connections. And I saw just in your list of repatriation and stolen Nazi art, and I was realizing that while we often think about Nazi stolen art as kind of the pictures were taken from families, but it popped up in my head that, for example, Jewish Germans were forced to sell every kind of jewelry and kind of silver objects, gold objects, and they are still now in some of them in museums, in local museums in Germany. And we had a panel on repatriation here of human remains and artifacts where I didn't think doing the panel actually about this connection. So I thank you for this. And my question is more in how do you sustain this in the future? Because this is an enormous project, and do we have ideas what to do in the future? Because this is also what we are thinking about with the conference, how we keep these connections, how we extend them, and so on.
Thank you for recognizing that, Wolf. The repatriation aspect was an incredible piece that tied these two things together. And we were lucky enough to have Jackie Swift, who is at the National Museum of the American Indian, as one of our presenters in the NEH colloquium on repatriation. And to be able to have this as a constant reminder. One of the things that I think in terms of the conference and in terms of keeping these connections is really that we need a better understanding of the Native genocide. This is, or the Native American genocide rather. And I think this is really on the academic side of being able to have this as a part of whether it's Indigenous studies or history in general. That is an important aspect of this work. But I do also think that a lot of we've been so segregated in terms of looking at contemporary Native art or ethnographic art or historical Native art, that we tend to only do this subject matter in these spaces. And I think as a contemporary art gallery director, one of the things that I really want to highlight is that instead of pigeonholing art into these silos of this is Indigenous art, this is African American art, this is, instead of doing that, to be inclusive so that our DEIA initiatives extend into our programming, that there is some aspect of inclusion that doesn't have to be called out as wholly only one people's art. So I think there are a variety of ways to be able to do this and to continue this work, and it's going to take a lot of reminding, but I think it really does begin in the academic realm.
So briefly related in the academic realm in like a very practical way. For example, I teach gallery and museum studies, that's my focus, but I have one art history kind of general survey course every semester. Now, the paper that those students are assigned is always around repatriation, involves your traditional visual analysis and all of that, but it addresses repatriation and specifically, even though, I could assign anything for a survey course but so building curriculum in relationship. So you do a project or you do a conference, but then building curriculum in relationships or programming. And the other is what I mentioned, which was very much, thank you so much to the Kupferberg Holocaust Center, the director, Dr. Laura Cohen, and Marissa Hollywood, associate director, who saw the importance of continuing this and said, what can we do? How can we do that? And thus we have this Human Rights in Museum series so that every year there is programming that builds on this. And then again, that library guide that builds on it and really tries to connect the materials like we did during the exhibition to different disciplines. So to biology, to English, to, not just to the kind of what you'd think, which would be like maybe to art and art history and so forth. Yeah.
So we're just giving you a round of applause and thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danyelle and Kat.